Recording has started.
Always good to know. Okay, I'd like to call to order the City of Sunrise City Council study session. The date is 13th of September and the time is 6:01. Again, as a reminder, on June 30th, Governor Inslee issued the Washington Ready Guidelines, effectively reopening the state of Washington and removing the COVID-19 restrictions. City of Sunrise looks forward to welcoming members of the public to its meetings in person, but until further notice, we'll continue to conduct the meetings 100% virtually using the Zoom platform. And the Zoom access information is on the council agenda and included in the city's website. With that, I will do a roll call. Councilmember Botetto.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Hayden.
Here.
Councilmember Hochstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Newman.
Here.
And Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Okay, all council members are present and accounted for. And we have one item under regular business, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion and training consultant agreement. Mr. Wilson, should I start out with you?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And let me get my screen share going here. All righty. Okay, just like the Mayor said, one item on tonight's agenda, and that's
Jason, just you're in a preview mode, I think shows. Yeah, the next slide on the thing. So
how about that?
That's better. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. You never know which way it goes. All right, so we have one item on the agenda, and that's a review of the RFQ process that we went through for our diversity, equity, and inclusion training. With me tonight are two members of actually we have three members of the DEI committee, four if I count Brad, sorry, four members of the DEI committee present, including City Attorney Andrea Marquez, Pretreatment Coordinator Andrea Swan, who's actually our chair of our committee, Chief Maricki and Jeff Steffens all sit on the DEI committee. All in all, we have about 10% of our staff that are members of the committee, and they've been rather active over the last year working on several things. This is one of the big projects that they've been working on in the deliverables. So I just want to personally thank all of them for their involvement on the committee. And there was three members that spent a lot of time working on this project, including both Andrea's and communications coordinator Joe McKinney. So with that, we'll get started. We're going to review the RFQ process that we went through, and then introduce you to who the city has selected, which is Cross-Cultural Dynamics. We'll review the tentative training plan as well as the anticipated cost. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Swan, who will go over the scope that we used, which is what the training is based on.
Thanks, Jason. Hello, everyone. We were, as a committee, very excited to work through this goal or objective. We had our eye on awareness training as a committee for a while. We wanted to be conscious of tailoring the scope to meet our city's specific needs. And we took the approach when we were creating our scope, thinking of it in terms of, where we are now and where we want to go. So in this slide here, it reflects meeting the first component, awareness training. It reflects where we are now. We think it will help employees recognize and respect that and value differences, which would lead to innovative approaches to our work and promote diverse thought. And so the defined training goals are listed here. These are what we really wanted to highlight during each of the trainings and on an awareness level. And so the second component is on the next slide. It took some time to think this one through, and we utilized requests from other agencies, similar agencies, locally in Washington, in our region, and nationwide. This is meeting our goal, or of wanting to get services from a consultant to help us know where we want to go and how to get there, and which is to create a sustainable and viable training program. So this training is actually for the DEI committee, because we don't want to be meeting as a group. We don't want to be doing anything related to this objective or the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, out of a response or an obligation. We want to create meaningful change. And so we think this toolkit will help us achieve the goal of a sustainable and viable training program moving forward. I think we tailored it to be a manual of best practices. So giving guidance on, framework, giving resources and processes such as best practice documents, and train us on how to, or give us guidance on how to measure efficacy of the training when we need it. And then, so the next slide, I'll go into how we, the proposals that we got. We received 12, 11 of which were complete. As Jason was saying, we formed a subcommittee. There was to review these, there was a wide range of costs that were submitted. You can see here, I think the highest estimation was 171,000 for all services met. And most were in the $30,000 to $50,000 range. And the submittals were from agents or organizations within our region, as well as nationally. And so in the next slide, I'll talk a bit about the subcommittee review process. The subcommittee poured over all of the proposals that were submitted. We met internally to share highlights from each, and we made considerations based on their qualifications, their ability to meet our specific needs. Did they have a tailored response, or was it more cookie cutter, kind of like what we saw most other training programs, how they looked? And then cost versus services. And there were 3 that really stood out to us above the rest, and those were listed here: Cross-Cultural Dynamics out of Arizona, Kaleidoscope Group from Illinois, and Strategy Matters from Massachusetts. On the next slide, we tell a little bit more about each of these, but a highlight from each, cross-cultural connections. They stood out as just highly trained consultants with a very impressive background for each of their trainers. Kaleidoscope Group, they stood out as having quite a bit of experience working with local governments. And Strategy Matters, they had thorough description of deliverables and outcome. And all 3 we just really thought would have been a really great fit for what we were looking for. So we approached the committee at large with these 3, and the committee voted, and we voted to reach out to Cross-Cultural Dynamics as our trainer for these services. And I think with that, Jason's going to talk a little bit more about CCD.
Thanks, Andrea. First off, I just think it's amazing that we put out an RFQ and we get responses from across the country. I think that just shows you how specialized this training is and how needed and limited the trainers are. Other cities in our area have done similar RFQs. In fact, y'all did one shortly before us, and they had similar responses throughout the country. So who is Cross-Cultural Dynamics? CCD for short. They're based in Phoenix, Arizona. They provided services to many governmental, education, and nonprofit companies, including cities of Phoenix and Chandler, as well as the judicial branch of Arizona and Maricopa County, several school districts, also the state of Arizona Department of Child Safety, as well as a number of nonprofits and private companies. They're definitely a multidiscipline team approach. It's led by Dr. Jeff McGee. They have in your council packet, there's bios for all of the people that will be involved in this. We have a psychologist, there's a human resources professional, there's career coaches, all overseen by Dr. McGee. Our staff has spoken to Dr. McGee a couple times during this process and have been very impressed with his approach to training and how it really is an interactive program with some self-learning that goes on. What they are proposing is virtual. There'll be 3 non-police cohorts. These are 4 sessions each over 4 months from October through March. There'll be 1 council cohort in 2022, which will be 3 sessions. The DEI committee work that Andrea just mentioned, that really sets us up for the future and kind of how we incorporate what we've learned into our culture throughout the city, as well as some internal processes for onboarding and making sure that we have continuous development of our program. And then the police department training will occur in 2022 as well. And we're still working to finalize the specific details of that. That's because the Law Enforcement Training Act that was passed, this is in response to I-940. It does require quite a bit of training, and the CJTC is developing that training right now, but they're still several years away from having that rolled out statewide. So, yes, sir.
Barb has a question. Go ahead, Barb.
Sure.
So can you just clarify what cohort means?
Cohort is a group. So what they'll be doing is we're going to divide our non-police staff into 3 different groups. One group will be our supervisors and directors, and the other 2 groups will be line level employees. And you'll go through your 4 training sessions with that group. So you kind of learn together and it builds off of each other.
Thank you.
Yep. As I was mentioning, the police training, there is some mandatory training that's covered under the Law Enforcement Training Act as a response to I-940. That is a few years out still with the CJTC. So Chief Murky has been in contact with Dr. McGee and working on developing a kind of this interim approach to training that meets our immediate needs and will supplement the future CJTC training. We anticipate a finalized training plan on that here within the next week. So anticipated cost for the training is $36,875. That's for the non-police training, the council training, and the DEI committee work. We anticipate the police training coming in another $10,000 to $12,000. As a reminder, the 21 through 22 biennial budget included $20,000 for DEI related training. So we are a bit over budget at this point. We are recommending, however, that council allocates another $30,000 to complete the training over the next 12 to 14 months. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about this and then give you a timeline for next steps.
Thank you, Jason and Andrea. Council members, questions, comments for either Andrea or Jason? See if there's any other hands raised besides you, Barb, and I. Okay, we'll call on Cindy, then call on Kathy, and then we'll go call on Charlotte, and then back to Barb.
So can the same instructors teach the police as the rest of the city staff? Is the police training quite a bit different than what we will receive?
It will be the same cadre of teachers. And the content might be tailored slightly different because of our police department shift work. They're going to have some more independent learning that then is merged into the group environment.
But what we're learning is sort of a basic philosophy. Is that what we're getting at here?
Yeah, let me go back to the action here. And your packet has a lot more detail than this presentation. But
yeah, well, I did read the packet, but I guess to change people's beliefs is a really large goal. And I'm just wondering how they, how is it possible, to really open people's eyes and let it stick in their system and their brain and their actions. So.
Well, this is all about education and opening people's minds and realizing that, racism does exist in our community, and how do we respond to it? Understanding how everybody has bias and how to identify those and how to, undo that bias or be aware of it, so at least you can work around it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a learning process, and it's not something that's new to the city with this consultant. It's something that we've trained our staff on. Many of our staff members have been through training for years on this, and this is kind of just the next step. We used to do a lot of training through Pierce County Human Services when they offered it, and unfortunately that's no longer an option. So we're having to go out and seek our own consultants to get this rather than being able to benefit from the on-site trainers through Pierce County.
Okay, I just envisioned the police training having to be sort of almost like a hands-on, more, interaction back and forth on how to treat people. So it's just hard for me to get my head around. I'm really excited to see and learn about it. So thank you for the committee doing such a great job of investigating what is right for us. So thank you.
No problem. Councilmember Hochstetter, we'll upgrade Chief Muricky. He's here and he can answer any specific questions or even probably do a better job filling in than I could. So we'll upgrade him while we take the next question, if that's all right.
Thanks, Jason. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, so did we get any references that we could check with other people that have taken this particular course to get their thoughts and ideas on it? And then also, is it totally virtual, or are there going to be some interactive in-person meetings? And my last question is, will it be done during council time, or will it be done on our own time?
So let me go to the first question, and that is references. Yes, they've definitely done work for other governments. The training is similar, but it's not exact. It's definitely tailored for our organization. So we're really checking the references of, are they a company that is committed, they know what they're talking about, and they meet deadlines. But the content would be variable. Second, it is all virtual training. That's really a cost saving. You look at some of those higher end RFQ responses we got. Those are because they're in person. You're paying a lot of extra for that. So it is largely virtual, but you can be interactive in a virtual environment through breakout rooms and polls and things of that nature. And then when it comes to council training, that is going to be a decision for a future mayor and council of, do we incorporate into study session times, or do we do a Saturday retreat? How do we do it? But it is meant to be all in a group setting.
Okay.
And I think a lot of that's going to depend on our health status at that point. You know, what are the current restrictions that we're under?
All right. Thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Charlotte.
Thank you. So Jason, you just started to touch on a clarifying question that I had, and that was when you referred to cohorts, sounded like this was strictly for staff, which is fine. Like, I'm glad that that's happening, but I do feel like council needs its own training just because of the policy decisions that we make, and we may not be aware of us not asking the right questions, like how zoning impacts communities. That's just one example, but it could be all kinds of things. And so it was unclear to me entirely about whether council training was included in this RFQ and whether that would be, if, and it's, I can't tell from that last answer that it may be not.
No, it is definitely included in this. The dates are not locked down yet because we want to wait till after the new year, full new count, you know.
Okay, and
But
then,
yeah.
okay, and then council, so you're saying the dates would be up to the new mayor, but not whether this is part of the contract?
Correct. It's in the contract. So
Okay,
it's just determining the format, like, are we gonna do it in the study session hour, or are we gonna do a Saturday special
separate
session?
meeting.
Right.
sure, okay.
That-
And then council would then be its sort of its own core cohort. It wouldn't be intermingled with staff.
So council's its own cohort, but there is discussion, at least at the director levels, participating in both their own cohort as well as council. And the way that CCD set this up is the supervisors and directors are actually in the last cohort. So the instructors can listen and learn from the first two about maybe things that they're seeing in the culture, right?
Yeah.
And
like-
then help change if there's something at the supervisor level. And then the same thing, you know, staff will be going through it, and then we'll go through the council so we can help relay whatever we're seeing or hearing at the staff level.
Okay, thanks. I would be curious to know about whether, I mean, I guess we can evaluate halfway through or maybe when it's done about whether extra hours are needed for like additional sessions if even more complicated issues arise or, you know, or if more resources are needed. I am curious on a side, this is my own curiosity, not a reflection at all in any way. Like, thank you for the work and the thoughtfulness with the top three. I am curious about how many of those, how many of the contractors who applied were within the region.
I think one, right, Andrea? One of the Andreas?
Yes, one of them.
Interesting. Okay, only one. Okay, thank you. That's all I
Okay.
have.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Charlotte. Bart, before we get to you, Josh raised his hand, so if we could call on him first. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, just kind of curious, did we seek this out on our own, or is this some training that's being required?
This was sought out on our own, and this was, I think, right before you got on council. This was something that the previous council had discussed and included in the budget.
Yeah, I'm all for it, but it does seem like a lot of money for virtual training.
Yep. I mean, if you look at Josh, if you look at the overall spread, yeah, you can see if you get away from virtual that it went up a lot higher. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure that it's that out of line.
Well, actually,
Good. What'd you say?
yeah, Mayor, to put it in perspective, so each cohort is about 30 students, and it's $8,200 or $8,400 for 4 sessions at 2 hours each. So 8 hours worth of training. You know, it actually is fairly economical training for what we send people to. If you do it by the hour.
Okay. Barb, back to you.
Okay. I was curious, where do you expect the money to come from?
This will be out of the general fund. So it'll come out of fund balance.
Okay.
It's going to come out of the council budget.
Yeah.
At least got a few smiles on that one. Geez. Okay.
We've already spent it a few times.
Well, of course. Chief Brad, did you have any comments you want to make? Some of the questions that were raised?
Just a couple things that have come up a couple times. To Cindy's question about, is this going to be custom for the police? And that's kind of one of the advantages we've had in talking with CCD, is that it is somewhat going to be tailored to different roles we play in the city. So you've got your counter-facing people, your field crews, you've got your supervisors, your policymakers, and you've got your police officers. So there's going to be some, to that extent, some customization in the curriculum. And part of it's going to be, my understanding is that even though it's virtual because of the geography between us and COVID and all that good stuff and cut down travel expense, it's still going to be interactive, right? So it's not just going to be watch a video, yawn, nod off, absorb what you can. It's going to challenge. I've been to some similar training, and it's really going to cause you to challenge, your beliefs. And you mentioned your beliefs. How do you change, beliefs? And then that's what this is designed to really do, is challenge those beliefs. So I think I know when I talked with Dr. McGee, we had a strategy session last Monday, both Andy and I, and he does have someone on staff that's prior law enforcement experience. So cops all like to think they're special, right? And no one can do their jobs with them. So they're able to build in somebody into the as an instructor that can help relate, right? Help relate with the kind of work that police officers do and some of the dynamics that they face. So after talking to him, I'm pretty excited about this engagement, and I think it will be beneficial to everyone in the city.
Thank you very much, Chief. Okay. Any other questions or comments the council has? Good questions you raised so far. What I'd like to do is just a big thank you to Andrea, the chief, to city administrator. I mean, everybody involved in this thing. It's a lot of work, and I think you've done a great job. I think it's a really good firm that you've chosen, and thank you for your leadership. It's really appreciated. So next steps, Mr. Wilson, this will be on council agenda when? You're muted.
Okay, this will be on the meeting for October 4th for approval.
Okay, cool. Okay, again, nice work. And thank you for spending your evening with us, Andrea. We appreciate it. Okay, we close this thing out, go back to the larger view. City Administrator report, Mr. Wilson.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Woo, okay. Agenda setting, any council meeting agenda issues or committee scheduling issues for anyone? Patrick, go ahead, and then Kurt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I gave Jason a heads up, but I won't be available for the meeting on October 18th.
Yes, you did, and thank you for letting us know, Patrick. Appreciate it. Let's see, who else was that? Kurt, you go ahead.
Yeah, the only time I see my cousin is when there's a funeral. And this Wednesday, there's no funeral, but I'm going to the Mariner game. And it's in the afternoon, so I won't be able to make public safety. So if Mr. Reed is available,
I'm Mr. Reed.
I'm looking at my calendar. It will be close, but I think I can get there. If not at 5, maybe shortly after.
thank
Kurt?
you.
Kurt,
Or may I propose we join Kurt at the game and do our meeting
I-
during the 7th inning stretch?
there
I
you
will
go.
cancel work that day if that will.
I like Brad's approach. I think that's a good one. Okay, Kurt, looks like it's play ball.
All right, thanks.
Have fun.
And I hope the game isn't the funeral. Okay, so it takes care of that. We don't have, excuse me, we have more hands raised. In fact, Charlotte's giving me more than one hand raised. She's also waving at me in Cindy Hochstetter style. So,
Well, the first
go
one
ahead.
didn't work. So
Yeah, well, I was getting back to the screen here. Go ahead, Charlotte, and then Josh.
October 11th, unfortunately, I will not be able to make that council meeting.
Okay, got you down there. Josh,
September 27th study session. I should be able to get on it, but I am going to be pushing it for time. So I may be a few minutes late. And I think we have actually a meeting later at 7:15 that night, which is fine. I'll make that easy. Just the 6 o'clock, I'll be pushing it.
okay. Got that one. Okay, any other hands that I missed? Don't see any. Okay, looking back up, okay, no executive session. And that means that since there's no more business before the city council tonight, this meeting is adjourned at 6:33. Have a blessed evening, everyone.
Have a good night,
Right.
everyone.